Proud supporters of Africa this week. Engine, with us, you are number one.
In Nigeria, the solid minerals mining sector is on the rise. Lerato Mbele spoke to Iyoma Goodwill, CEO of Rhodium Limited, about the prospects for mining in Nigeria and asked him how strategic the mining of minerals is to Nigeria's general growth strategy.
Generally, what I think is happening is because Nigerians are not well imbibed concerning the solid mineral potentials of this country, and not even the government themselves are well imbibed of what the solid mineral sector can do for this country. And I believe what they have to do right now is to arrange something like an open platform for Nigerians themselves to see what the solid mineral sector can do for Nigeria, and talk less about the oil industry. Yeah.
Talk to us about how well endowed, I don't even know if that's the right sort of combination of words, Nigeria is by way of mineral resources. We know Zamfara State, for instance, is said to have the largest composition of iron ore in all of Africa. What else does Nigeria have to offer?
Oh yeah, we have a whole lot of minerals. Being in the industry for 12 years, I'll tell you that there are several other minerals recently discovered that are not listed at the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. We have discovered large deposits of minerals like lithium, for instance. We have large deposits of lithium in Yola State, Nigeria. We have some large deposits of manganese and copper as well. And they've discovered several large deposits of gold in Nigeria as I speak, which are not documented. They've not been documented at the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, mainly because proper exploration is not going on at these sites. Most of them are green fields, and it's only this iron ore that we have some Chinese people trying to team up with the government, Zamfara state government, so they were able to announce this to the general public. But if all the properties are announced likewise, I think the world will realize the potentials of Nigeria. Yeah.
Let's talk about policy clarity, because apparently that's really what's adding confusion, is that the government pays lip service to the idea of a solid minerals sector, but is not coming up with the policy to support that. And in fact, in 2008, licenses were revoked in order for them to be reviewed. So things like that tend to happen. That makes investors worried.
Yeah, I know. It affected a whole lot of us in the industry then. But one thing they must understand is this is more like an infant industry in Nigeria we're trying to build. Most of the laws are imported laws. We're using some of the laws we took from the Germans, the Canadians, and trying to put it together to build a very strong Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, including how do you say, the rules we're using governing the mining sector. And we're doing very well. Recently, I visited the mining cadastral office, and I saw the changes that are done there. Even we that are miners holding licenses are having difficulties to hold some of our licenses because the rules are now really very strong and strengthened, and there's security of tenure right now, I can tell you. To have an exploration license in Nigeria is not as easy as it were before. They've addressed the issue of community consent right now, so you don't have to have a political crisis wherever you're going to mine. The government is ready to secure your mining properties, your machineries. And the laws really right now, they are impressive. And I know any investor that comes into the mining industry right now, going through the laws will be confident to invest, yeah.
South Sudan splits away from the north on the 9th of July to create Africa's newest nation after Southerners voted for secession. The upcoming challenges will certainly take a back seat to the euphoria surrounding the historic moment. Catherine Masinde, Senior Private Sector Development Specialist at the World Bank Group, joined us in studio, and Lerato asked her what the priorities were for the southern Sudanese people in the advent of independence.
Right now, their priorities are mainly to settle down and develop their country. They are very focused on development. They are very focused on getting in investors, and we've been helping them prepare for that.
All right. But the road to liberation has been marred by violence. This year alone, over 2,360 people have been killed in ethnic clashes, particularly South Kordofan. What are the problems?
I am not really familiar with the political angle here, and I cannot comment very much on the war in the north. But what I know is that even in those states, they're preparing for investors. They're very keen to get development on the ground to reduce some of the impacts of that conflict.
Okay. So on Saturday also, like I'm saying, we have a situation where the UN mission ends there, the comprehensive peace agreement expires, and they've got to now tackle their own security and their own developmental issues. Is the administration ready for that?
I think the government is trying very hard. What I understand is that there are a lot of plans in place to get some capacity on the ground to deal with these issues. There will be a period of time when all of us should continue to support the country because they are at that point where they are developing a new nation. So I think what I can say is that if they do get development through private sector investments, it will be a sustainable development.
I mean, infrastructure is a very basic and pressing need for southern Sudan. We know that a lot of Kenyan cement companies are wanting to get in there, so to the banks, to help fund some of this infrastructure investment. But is there a plan, a blueprint?
The Southern Sudanese government has just produced their first development plan, and infrastructure is a key element of this. When I first went into Southern Sudan, they had only 8 kilometers of tarred road in the whole region. As we speak today, they have well over 200 kilometers already done. So my view is that they have actually got a plan in mind. They've put it on paper. They're sharing it with development partners, with the private sector. And I believe that this is going to be a solid plan going forward.
Human capital in southern Sudan, because we know that the poverty rate is quite high, and so too the illiteracy rate, apparently above 70%. A lot of southern Sudanese who've been living in northern Sudan are coming home to be part of this, and they may contribute in the civil service. But generally, how is having a poverty-stricken, unskilled population going to hamper the development process here?
I think the southern Sudanese have had the last 5 years to test out some of the models. And what I know is that they're working very hard with different governments, with IGAD, for example, to help them get capacity on the ground quite quickly. We see a lot of people from the diaspora coming back and bringing with them quite high skills. And I think the challenge is to find a place for these people to stay, because the housing market hasn't picked up yet. And that's where the private sector is really going to add value. Building schools, building healthcare facilities is what really is going to be the bedrock of the human capacity development. But having said that, people like ourselves at the IFC have been helping them to put in place building blocks to get the private sector to get interested in partnering with the government to develop some of these areas.
The Zimbabwe government this week officially launched the medium-term plan that is expected to give impetus to the country's economic growth and national development in the next 5 years. We spoke to Isaac Kwesu, Head of Research at MMC Capital, for more details about the medium-term plan.
The key objectives of this MT plan is to uplift the economy into a growth trajectory. As you know, Zim for the past 10 years have been on the downside. Also, the other objective is to ensure that we restore macroeconomic stability, lower inflation rate, specifically single-digit inflation, interest rate that should be lower, to propel domestic investment, as well as lower current account deficit, as well as to reduce the sovereign debt to around 60% of GDP by 2015. The core plan is relating to achieving those targets. One will be leverage on financing, the growth sectors, specifically agriculture, mining, and manufacturing, as well as preparing the key enablers. Here I'm talking specifically of the infrastructure, increasing the power generation capacity to meet the national demand, specifically the industry requirements.
How are they going to fund this program, Isaac? Because we're hearing about possibly a sovereign wealth fund, mobilizing domestic savings, pension funds, trying to get more foreign credit lines.
Yeah, sure. According to MTP, their major source of financing the plan will be domestic savings. Assumption is that if the economy grows, so does national savings. Also, there will be enhancing some foreign direct investment efforts to access credit lines, as well as coming up with some public-private partnership arrangements.
Let's talk about the prospects for the two areas. The mobilization of domestic savings, that's the first issue. Wages are quite low in Zimbabwe. There's been a huge exodus of skilled Zimbabweans, so there's not a real big pool of people to just try to, generate this financing from. So effectively, it almost sounds too ambitious. And when we talk about credit lines from abroad, we know donors don't want to be involved in Zimbabwe, and many banks don't seem to be willing to take on the risk.
Yeah, I agree with you to a large extent. I think this is one of the major mammoth tasks that the government is kind of facing. If you just remember, before we talk about this MTP, we used to have what we call the STEP, and just like this MTP, it required 10 billion, and we failed to access even half of this amount. The government is talking about mobilizing domestic savings. One of the major challenges they are likely to face is currently, with the lower income levels in Zimbabwe, majority of the locals are negative net savers. In fact, they are de-saving as opposed to saving. Only when the economy grows that we expect this saving to grow. But for the economy to grow, the kickstart that is required is this 9.2 billion. So it becomes a chicken and egg situation, which one to start and which one to end. Also, to talk about foreign direct investment or foreign credit lines, with the current political setup in Zimbabwe, where the most foreign investors worry about the safety of their investments, it remains a major challenge if one is to expect much inflows. From outside the country.